Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nerdy Movie News Roundup, the show where we round up all, and I do mean all, of the latest news in the world of nerdy movies. So we got some stuff to talk about today. We got some things over here to chat about. You know what I mean? Let's get into the first thing. I don't, I don't know what I'm saying. Oh my God, Minecraft animated series. What? So we obviously have the Minecraft movie coming out, but it's going to be live action and possibly is going to end up being the most horrific thing we've ever seen in our entire lives. But at least we have an animated series coming to Netflix, and I say at least because that could also end up being terrible, but at least it'll be animated. You know? Like, that's just one of the big questions about the movie is what the fuck is it going to look like? But we can very much imagine what a Netflix animated Minecraft series would look like. So I'm interested in it. We'll see if it's actually any good or if it's just going to end up being like a shitty like children's show. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to make any assumptions because that would make an ass out of you and me. I'm not interested in doing that. So let's move on to the next thing. Lanterns. We got some screenwriters over here. You want some screenwriters over here? We got some screenwriters over here. So James Gunn posted on Instagram. Yes, it's true. The Lanterns DCU series is putting together a crack team of writers based on a wonderful pilot script and Bible by Chris Mundy, Tom King, and Damon Lindelof. Already welcome to Chris and Damon Lindelof as they join the DC Studios family. No welcome necessary for old Tom King, who has been here nearly since inception. So, Damon Lindelof and Chris Mundy. Damon Lindelof is, of course, most famous for Lost. That is a show that I've never seen. But I understand that show was like very good in the beginning and then it wasn't very good near the end. Listen, the interesting thing about the DCU is that I can at least have faith in that. This is James Gunn has said this, right? And based on reports, it seems like it's consistent with how everything's been operating. But they are going to be writing scripts. Imagine this. Writing scripts, making sure that the scripts are finished and completed before they go into production on projects. Whereas Marvel, they will literally start filming a movie and the third act isn't even completed. They do this. And I think that's a large reason as to why, a bunch of their movies are ass as of late. Oh Jesus. I think they've obviously have experienced writers there. And I'm definitely eager and excited to see what this ends up being. I know it's supposed to be True Detective with two Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. I think that's a very compelling premise as a starting point. So, yeah, I'm definitely interested to see where this goes. All right, next up. Giancarlo Esposito, he spoke about how he's going to show up in the MCU. So, they put out a tweet here. This is what he said at some convention or something. He said, "The MCU has knocked on my door, and it's a role you won't predict. It will be teased, and then there will be a series afterwards." So, basically saying that he's going to probably show up in a movie, right, where he says it'll be teased, and then he will show up in a series. So people are, making predictions and whatnot. I mean, when it comes to Giancarlo Esposito, there's been a lot of talk about Professor X, him playing Charles Xavier. There's been a lot of talk about Magneto, it's one of those things where you look at Magneto's origins and him being a Holocaust survivor, and that provides some complications because at this point in time, a Holocaust survivor would be kind of too old to be Magneto in the MCU. But then other people will counter that and they'll say, well, you could just make him age slower. And then it's like, okay, but what about Professor X? Shouldn't they be contemporaries? And then it's like, well, make him age slower too. And then it's like, okay, but that just seems like lazy writing at that point for me. It's just convenience for convenience's sake. I wouldn't mind them going with a different like origin story for Magneto. I know people have brought up like the Rwandan genocide to have it be a little him be a descendant of that, to have it be a little more contemporary. Humanity has no shortages of atrocities that we commit, so I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff you could do as well. But I mean, honestly, when it comes to the X-Men, it's going to be complicated in general. I'm not going to pretend like there's like an easy way to go about it. But yeah, I mean, as far as like other stuff, like I'm of the opinion that I could very easily see him playing like a shady government agent in a movie. Because there's another rumor. I'm not necessarily covering it as a topic because it's like from one of these like scoopers, that anonymous scoopers, where I tend to just ignore them. But I will bring up here that there was a rumor that he's actually going to appear in Captain America Brave New World. So if he appears in that, I could very easily see him playing a shady government official. Well, because I've also seen people kind of conflating him saying that that there will be a series after, as him saying that he is going to have his own series. I don't necessarily think that that's true, or that's not necessarily what that quote conveys. Like that could very easily just be him appearing in a series. So I don't necessarily think so. Like, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think he's necessarily going to play like a super important character. He could just play a side character. But honestly, I'm at the point where it's like I kind of want to see Giancarlo Esposito play something different. He's very much been typecast as Gus Fring in everything that he's in. So like I think a Charles Xavier would be super cool. But it's like, would Charles Xavier ever show up in a series? I don't know. I'm not really too familiar with what other heroes he could be playing. So honestly, we still have no idea, but the news story here that's been confirmed is that Giancarlo Esposito is not just going to be in the MCU in a movie, he's also going to be in a series. So, get informed. That's what you come to this show for, isn't it? All right, next up. James Gunn is teasing Deathstroke. This is coming from his Threads account. Somebody asked him, James Gunn, please wink if you have plans for Deathstroke. I am waiting for my boy to shine for so long. And he replies with a little winky face. So, Deathstroke is an interesting character, he's like, I've never read the comics, so I guess I'm going by word of mouth, but especially when you look at the cartoons, I've always known him as like a Teen Titans villain. But then as of late, he's kind of been worming his way into becoming a Batman villain. He was one of the villains in Batman Arkham Origins. And then he was going to be the main villain in Ben Affleck's Batman movie that was canceled in favor of Matt Reeves' film. So he's kind of been like worming his way into becoming a Batman villain. So I guess like the obvious thing would be to say, oh, well, he's probably going to be the villain in, Batman Brave and the Bold. But my guess, and this is a guess, I don't know, but my guess is that he's actually going to be the villain in the Teen Titans movie that they announced a while ago. Because I think James Gunn seems to be more like of a comic accurate. He seems to be going in a more like comic based approach to the series. Like I really love the way that he like uses comic book art in order to tease his projects and stuff like that. So that's just my guess. My guess is that he's probably going to try to lean more in a comics accurate direction. So that's my prediction at the moment. I think Deathstroke is going to end up being the villain of a Teen Titans movie, but I could very well be wrong. He very well could just be the villain in Brave and the Bold. Or honestly, he could be like a side character in Brave and the Bold, and maybe that sets up his like antagonistic relationship with Damian Wayne, and then he ends up being the full-on villain in Teen Titans. So he could be in both. Or he could be in some other project altogether. We don't really know. Now do we? But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. All right, next up. We're getting another Sherlock show. I'm only using Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock as a thing, just as an image. But this has nothing to do with the BBC show. Well, I'll read the article. Why don't I? This is coming from comicbook.com. Young Sherlock. You loved Young Sheldon, now get ready for Young Sherlock is getting a series from Prime Video, and Guy Ritchie will be directing and executive producing. Fans can look forward to 8 episodes of Hero Finds Tiffin, I don't know, as the iconic detective instead of Robert Downey Jr. as he pieces together a global conspiracy. For Young Sherlock, Matthew Parkhill is aboard as writer and showrunner. So we, of course, have been wondering whether or not Guy Ritchie was ever going to get around to making a third Sherlock movie with Robert Downey Jr. This seems to kind of put that to bed. Like, it's probably never going to happen if Guy Ritchie is now moving on to this. But I mean, listen, I really love the Guy Ritchie, Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies. I feel like they just have a really great energy to them. I think Robert Downey Jr. is fantastic in that role. As a kid, I thought that the slow motion, detective fighting sequences, I remember thinking those were the coolest fucking sequences ever. I don't know if it holds up if it would hold up as well watching those movies as an adult, but I loved those movies as a kid. So I'm definitely down to see anything that Guy Ritchie wants to do with Sherlock, especially if he can sort of hit that tone that those movies had, which is just a really fun tone. I think this could be really cool. And Sherlock is obviously it always gets reinvented in a bunch of different ways. So, would I love to see a third Sherlock with Robert Downey Jr.? Of course I would, but I'm not upset that we're getting a different take on it. So yeah, we'll see if this is any good. All right, next up. Sony has clarified something about their Paramount Plus potential acquirement situation. Let's just read the article. I'm doing a bad job of explaining it. So this is coming from Tony Vinciquera. He's somebody at Sony. I don't remember what his position is. We will not make investments that don't complement our core strategy. And our strategy is to have more IP, more product, more library to sell. We're not going to get into other businesses. We're not going to get into a general entertainment streaming service. We're not going to be operating other businesses that are outside the strategy that we have defined. So this is interesting because Sony is looking to potentially acquire Paramount. And the interesting thing about Sony is that they're one of the few big major studios that doesn't have a streaming service, right? They don't have Sony Plus. And that honestly has probably been one of the smartest decisions that I think has been made in the streaming wars, of just looking at the landscape, looking at the battlefield and being I have no interest in owning any of this land. I'll just create the ammunition and sell it to whoever wants to buy it. And that's kind of what Sony does, is that they make their shows and they make their content and then they just license it out to other streaming services that are burning billions of dollars trying to keep the services afloat. So what this means is that if Sony actually manages to buy Paramount, they're probably going to shut down Paramount Plus. And I mean, I wouldn't be too upset if that happened, because I don't think that content would stop being made. We would still get Star Trek shows and whatnot, but they would just get licensed out to other services, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see if this actually happens. But yeah. Well, I'm not necessarily a big fan of acquisitions and the market being shrunk and whatnot. I am a fan of lessening the amount of subscription services that there are, because Jesus Christ, am I right or am I wrong? All right, next story. We got to talk about the future of Mad Max. I guess I don't have a little image here. My apologies. So we'll just move on to the Hollywood Reporter article. The Reverend filmmakers Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, bowed to a disappointing $32 million domestically for the 4-day Memorial Day weekend and $36.5 million overseas, diminishing hopes for Mad Max The Wasteland. Another Max installment Miller, that's George Miller, of course, has been toying with for years. Sources agree that Wasteland's fate is complicated by Furiosa's box office, but stress it wasn't even in development. For its part, Warner's, where Miller is a beloved figure, says it is incredibly proud of Furiosa. So that's coming from the Hollywood Reporter. And listen, here's the thing. I'm just being real here. I'm probably going to hell. You know, it is what it is. This is probably where I'm headed. And it's going to suck, you know, burning for eternity or whatever's going to go on down there. But there is a solace that I will feel, that I will take, in knowing that all of you fucking pieces of garbage that didn't go see Furiosa are going to be right down there with me. You motherfuckers! I'm upset. I'm upset here. Because I was a Mad Max virgin, okay? I'd never watched an Angry Maxwell film before Furiosa. Okay, didn't watch Fury Road, didn't watch any of the Mel Gibson shit. Didn't play the game. Haven't read any of the comic books that may or may not exist. I have no idea. I went into Furiosa, I was like, hey, you know what, there's a new movie out. Let me check it out. Why not? It was fucking incredible. Probably my second favorite movie of the year after Challengers. Challengers is my favorite movie of the year so far. It was incredible. And now you're telling me that George Miller had plans for more and we're not going to get it? What? All because of you. You didn't watch it. Probably jacking off. Can't bother going to the theater to support cinema or whatever. Peak cinema, Kino, cinema, whatever the fuck the kids are saying these days. I'm upset. Will I find it in my heart to forgive you general audiences someday? Maybe. But today's not that day. We'll see if I get over this now, but to be serious. Yeah, listen, the movie hasn't been doing particularly well. And, you know, it should just be noted that this isn't a franchise that has ever done especially well. These movies have just never been massive box office hits. It's always been a niche franchise. So I do think that at the end of the day, while I love that they did it, because, you know, I went back and I watched Fury Road, the fact that Warner Brothers even gave George Miller budgets of $160 million is honestly very surprising. Like, the fact that they did that with Fury Road, that, again, it wasn't a massive hit at the box office. It might have even lost a little money. And then 9 years later, they were like, yeah, let's do it again for like a spin-off prequel movie. And yeah, it's not really doing great box office now. I mean, maybe they just give them the money again. I hope they do. So yeah, I guess like we really shouldn't be too surprised that the movie's not doing well. Even though it is amazing, it might also just be that general audiences just aren't all that interested in this weird, grimy, somewhat depressing post-apocalyptic situation. But at the same time, Fallout is a massive hit on Amazon, so I don't even know if you can make that excuse. It's just a franchise that doesn't hit with general audiences, and I guess that's something that I guess we just kind of have to accept, maybe. But I think another solution could just be for George Miller to maybe lower the budget. Like, if you can make a Mad Max movie, his Wasteland movie, if he can manage to make that for like 60, 70, 90, $100 million, then I think we might be talking, you know what I mean? And of course, that's just like one weekend. We'll see if we'll see if Furiosa maybe has like massive legs, right? Maybe it turns into the next Greatest Showman and it just like keeps on making money over time. We'll see. We'll see. I'll probably try to convince people to watch it over the coming months. But I mean, honestly, this really does speak to just other like big problems with the industry. Like, you know, a ton of movies are kind of are kind of not doing as well as maybe they should, or maybe as well as they would have a couple years ago. Like, The Fall Guy is another movie that people are kind of like, man, this is a great movie. Why is nobody watching it? Planet of the Apes is doing okay, right? I think it just crossed the $300 million mark, but it's not a great opening weekend. This past weekend, Garfield also, debuted to middling box office returns, although that's not nearly as bad of a situation because their budget was significantly lower than Furiosa. So it's just one of those things where like the box office in general is not doing particularly well. And I guess that's like a much broader topic, but yeah, as far as like Mad Max is concerned, it does look like its future is in doubt. I think our best hope is that George Miller is just able to make another movie with a significantly reduced budget. I don't know if he can, because of course the practical nature of these movies is such a wonderful element of them. So, we'll see what happens. But I'm disappointed in all of you that didn't go watch it. Hopefully one day I'll be able to find it in my heart to forgive you. But today's not that day. All right, let's get into the next story. Chris Hemsworth, who was, of course, in Furiosa that you didn't see. It looks like he's been cast in the Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie. It's going to be from The Hollywood Reporter. Chris Hemsworth is doubling down on Transformers. The actor is in talks to lead an untitled crossover film for Paramount and Hasbro Entertainment that unites the Transformers and G.I. Joe franchises. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed. Sure, why not? I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of Transformers or G.I. Joe, so I can't say I have much interest in this. And Chris Hemsworth, he's a good actor, so I'm sure he'll be in it, but I have no faith that he'll play anything more interesting than Soldier Man. Like, I just feel like he's going to play a generic soldier. That's just like what I imagine he will play, so I can't say that I'm especially intrigued to see the performance that he will give in this Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie, which, by the way, just kind of reeks of desperation. Because Transformers and G.I. Joe have not been very successful as of late. And it really does reek of desperation. They're like, well, maybe if we cross them over, they'll do better. It's like, okay, maybe. I don't know. But at the same time, I mean, this also does have the potential to just be fun. Like a stupid fun movie. And if that's the case, then I'll be happy for Transformers and G.I. Joe fans. So, we'll see. All right, last story of the day. 300 series is coming. It's coming from Variety. A 300 TV series adaptation is in early development at Warner Brothers Television. Variety has learned from sources. Exact plot details are still being worked out, but sources say that the show would serve as a prequel to the 2006 film. No writer or platform is currently attached to the project. Deals are still being negotiated, but Zack Snyder, who directed and co-wrote 300, is in talks to direct and executive produce the series. Sure. Why not? I guess. I don't know. Like, 300 was good. I remember really liking it as a kid. And then I don't think I ever watched 300 Rise of an Empire, so I have no idea if that's any good or not. But I don't know that anybody was asking for a 300 prequel series, but we'll watch large, muscular men fight. Why not? I don't know. It's a prequel, so I feel like Gerard Butler's probably too old at this point to come back for this. So they'd probably have to recast the role, but I think it's cool that Zack Snyder is, I guess, in talks to direct it, or in talks to direct and executive produce. I wonder if that means that he wants to direct all the episodes, or if that means that he'll like direct a couple of them. I'm not sure. It's also interesting that Zack Snyder is like talking about doing this, but then he's still presumably working on 2 cinematic universes and, Army of the Dead and Rebel Moon. I don't know. We'll see how this all works out. But yeah. Or I guess I should say, I don't know if this maybe means that one of those 2 are going to end up falling by the wayside, especially due to the poor reception to Rebel Moon. Which, by the way, I haven't watched Rebel Moon or Rebel Moon Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. You want to know why? Because fuck you, Netflix, and your stupid director's cut bullshit, okay? The fact that they put out some stupid PG-13, like, mandated cut of Zack Snyder's movie, I was like, no, I'm not doing this again. I'm like, you're telling me that you're putting out the fake movie, and that you're going to put out the real movie at a later date, I'm not going to watch the fake movie. I'm going to watch Zack Snyder's vision in all of its glory, for better or for worse, whenever that comes out. So I just skipped Rebel Moon because I was like, no, I'm not playing your games, Netflix. But people didn't like it. So, I'm curious to know if like Army of the Dead and or Rebel Moon, maybe one of those are going to be falling through the wayside. So now he kind of has more room to maybe work on this stuff with Warner Brothers now. We'll see. We shall see. All right. Now, let's get into what I've been watching. So, I talked about it earlier, but I watched Mad Max Fury Road. I did have a bit of a unique experience with this franchise in that I watched Furiosa first, and then went home and watched Mad Max. And I have to say, that was a very satisfying experience. Mad Max Fury Road really does feel like the sequel to Furiosa. To the point that I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I would have liked this movie at nearly as much if I hadn't watched Furiosa, because in a lot of ways, it's not really all that story driven. Like, it really does. It really does just like plop you into a situation, and then the situation happens. And because I already had the context of Furiosa, that was perfectly fine for me. But I don't know that I necessarily would have been complimenting like the narrative of the film nearly as much if I hadn't watched Furiosa, because there definitely are like really strong emotional beats and really good character moments. But it is at the very least heavily enhanced because I've seen Furiosa and I know it came before. But either way, Max Fury Road is awesome. Furiosa and Fury Road are two of my favorite action movies of all time. The way that George Miller shoots with intensity, with practical stunt work and stuff like that is it's absolutely incredible, right? The way that he uses sound design is incredible. His just the way these movies look are so saturated, but in a good way. These movies are simply two of the greatest action films of all time, and I'm just sad that we're probably not going to get more. Can we take some of our tax money and just fund George Miller? I feel like we should just fund his Mad Max movies. I feel like we would all be okay with that, right? Like take some of the stuff that you use to make bombs in the military and give it to George Miller. We don't need that many bombs, right? Like I don't think we need that many. What if we just did that? I don't know. I'm coping. Anyways, Fury Road is awesome. Definitely recommend it. But honestly, I kind of recommend watching Furiosa first and then watching Fury Road. I don't know. Maybe people are going to disagree with that, but that's kind of what I did, and it was a very good experience. So, next thing that I watched Doctor Who episode 5. So I saw on Twitter that Doctor Who fans were arguing about this episode. Some people think it's really great. Other people think it's terrible. I thought it was really great. I don't really want to say what happens in it because I feel like it's kind of very easy to spoil. But all I'll say is that I disagree with people that I guess the disagreement comes from people saying that, I'm organizing my thoughts in real time, but the episode is pretty ambiguous, and and it kind of leaves you with a sense of I'm not entirely sure what happened here. And there are people that are this episode was ambiguous, it sucks. But I thought that while the events and the mechanics of what happened are a little ambiguous, the themes that were presented were very much not ambiguous. So that's why I really liked it, but people disagree with that. I don't know. I guess just to talk about the new Doctor Who overall, I'm really enjoying the series. This is actually, again, kind of like with Furiosa, this is my first Doctor Who thing. I've never seen the Matt Smith one or the Peter Capaldi or whoever the fuck else has played Doctor Who in the past. It's one of those franchises that I was always there is way too much of you, and I don't feel like consuming it all. So I was you know what? Whatever the next thing is, I'll watch whatever the next thing is, and that's where I'll start. and it happened to be this one with Ncuti Guada or whatever his name is. And I'm enjoying the show so far. It's very whimsical. I like all the wacky sci-fi elements. But actually, I should say, it's been very wacky and whimsical, but episode 5 is actually very, like, pretty grim and serious in a lot of ways, which I thought was a nice change of pace, actually. So yeah, I liked it. You can yell at me in the comments about it if you want. All right, last thing I'm going to talk about today is I watched My Adventures with Superman episodes 1 and 2, and this is a pretty gosh ding dang darn good show. I really enjoy it. So I really loved the first season. Talked about how I feel like it was kind of like my first experience with what like Superman is supposed to be like, because you know I've watched like Man of Steel and Superman and Lois and like Smallville. Those are like my main sources of Superman consumption. And so I just never watched a Superman thing that revolved around Clark and Lois and Jimmy as a trio working at the Daily Planet and blah, 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 blah. And watching the first season, it was like the Danny DeVito meme of being like, I get it now. Like, and all of the things that I love about the first season they remain consistent with this one. I absolutely love Clark and Lois's relationship. They're probably my favorite couple in a TV show since Pam and Jim from The Office. I mean, I just absolutely love them. I really like what they're doing this season. We're exploring like Amanda Waller a bit more extensively. I think that's pretty interesting what they're doing with her and her like the whatever general guy that she betrayed. That all of that's kind of interesting. I like how they're kind of changing things up with Krypton. It feels like they kind of feel like Viltrumites kind of from Invincible. It's kind of weird, kind of interesting. And yeah, I'm excited to see whenever they introduce Supergirl because I know that that's coming. But yeah, overall I like it. Maybe a little more, or maybe not quite as good as like the first 2 episodes of the first season. I feel like those 2 episodes like really grabbed me. I was like, oh shit, I love this. I watched the first 2 episodes of season 2 and I was like, oh yeah, this is still really solid. But I think maybe the first 2 episodes of season 1 were stronger than these first 2 episodes, of season 2. But these first 2 episodes of season 2 are still pretty solid nonetheless. So yeah, that's about it for me this week. Bit of a shorter episode, I guess. I didn't necessarily intend for that to be the case, but that's just kind of what happened, I guess. So yeah, let me know what you thought about any and all that I talked about in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.